Welcome to the impossible present. This is Pastor Scott Conway at Quest Zion, and we are between Christmas and New Year's as I am recording this one. And as we prepare to launch into a new year, as we kind of reflect back on the last year and we prepare for whatever we're going to do for the next year, that I am pondering the impossibility of the right here, right now. And what I mean by that is where we are would be impossible to create on purpose. Think about all of the incredible variables that had to come together just so today could be what today is. And we can take something as dramatic as my own existence. In order for me to exist, that means a particular man and a particular woman had to get together or it wouldn't be me. And that from that particular man, some other particular man, a particular woman had to get together, or that particular man wouldn't have existed to get together with this particular woman. And you could reflect that back down the generations. And when you begin to look at stuff like that, you go, you know, the sheer probability that you could have predicted that Scott Conway, who I am, would exist would be astronomical. It would be statistically impossible. And we look at all of the things that I benefit from that had nothing to do with. Like I live in the 21st century. I live in an age that benefits from all the scientific advancement, all the cultural advancement that has happened in the generations before me for hundreds of years. And in particular, even little things like I live in the United States of America. For all of the complaints and all of the protests and everything else going on, I live in a free country. And regardless of whether someone wants to like get angry about this, that, or whatnot, that isn't perfectly exactly how they wish it was, consider how different it might have been if Japan had won the war, if Germany had won the war, if the Axis powers had defeated the Allies. How different could things have been if we had fallen to communism, or if we had fallen to Nazism, or we had fallen to some other imperialistic regime? Things could be very, very different, but I get to live in the here and the now. And in some of those moments, the way things tipped one way or the other kind of pivoted through some pretty scary moments in history where it really could have gone either way. And that makes all the wonders of this present kind of impossible, statistically impossible. That if something would not occur 10 to the 50th power, it is considered statistically impossible. Now, the difference, of course, is being something would have happened. And no matter what that something is, as improbable as that given something was, something was going to happen. And so when we consider what's possible, what's impossible, we can think about our own lives in terms of I stand right here, right now, at my age, in my time, in my place, at the accumulation of all the causes set in motion in my life. Every cause set in motion has had its accumulated effects, and each one of those produced some other starting point where other causes were introduced and produced other effects, and ultimately, I have landed right here. I have landed right now. Walt Disney is quoted as saying, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." I've got this a pressed quarter of "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." I've got this framed matte painting of Walt Disney walking the construction site, kind of superimposed in the Disneyland castle, kind of blending in the background with him walking through, and that quote, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." It used to be, back when I was younger, there was a quote about me. This is like, if it is humanly possible, Scott can do it. And if it's not humanly possible, 50-50. Now, obviously, that's a playful exaggeration, but part of the idea being is that mostly I was willing to give stuff a shot. If I say, I'll try, what I mean is, well, I think I can, but because I haven't before, I don't actually know for sure. Or I think I can, but because I haven't for a while, I don't actually know for sure. So I'm not going to say I'm going to do it if I don't actually know for sure that I'm going to be able to do it. And some of the places that shows up in things like if I'm going to do a standing backflip, Well, that's been a while. The last time I did a standing backflip was off of a dock into the ocean when I was staying at some friends had rented a cabana over the water. Well, okay, that's reasonably safe and confident. When was the last time I did a standing back tuck like on the ground? Well, I did one back in the dojo days. That's been a while. Could I do one today? I don't feel it there, but if at some point I did, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to do it. I would say I'm going to try. And a part of it is my reality and my words to me must align. If I say I'm going to do the thing, I must do the thing. And so that's me. But this idea of it's kind of fun to do the impossible, meaning it's kind of fun to do things that haven't been done before. It's kind of fun to achieve things that people might not have thought about, that they might not have considered as amongst the realm of possibilities. But the way we do these things is that every new place is a new starting point. So I can hop in my car now and drive across the country in a few days. I could hop in a plane and fly across the country in half a dozen hours. But there was an age where that was a months-long trip. And the idea of sitting in a seat in this giant metal container flying through the air was impossible. But there were people trying to figure out how to make it happen. And some of the flying things, we figured out balloons where we could get up there. We just couldn't like travel very fast. And we were at the whims of the wind. And then in the 1800s, we started coming up with ideas of how we could do fixed wing flight. And then in the 1900s, we started to develop planes and different ways of getting around faster and faster and carrying more and more people. And now we don't think twice about being able to hop on a plane in New York and land in LA. We don't think twice about being able to hop on a plane and fly from New York to London, where at one time that was a fairly significant boat trip. And the things that we have, the things that we experience are so impossible. And we even think about how luxurious they are. So I've got my phone here. And I was actually on my phone the other day and I was going through stuff and I'm going like, oh, this is taking so long. And then I paused and I just realized what I said, that I've got the supercomputer in my hand. I am walking around the Disney parks and something is taking photos or taking a long time to upload. Now, I put some of this in context. When I was young and I was first learning how to take photographs, we had this film you had to put in the camera. To get a flash, you had this bulb and you would affix it to the thing and it would flash, and the flash was only good for one flash and it would turn and it would flash and it would turn, and you had 4 flashes and 1 bulb, and that was like a big deal. And you could take 12 pictures or you could take sometimes 24 pictures. You had the big roll, you could take 36 pictures. And this is the world I grew up in. I grew up in a world without internet. I grew up in a world where you would go to your phone, and if you were going to make a long distance call, if you could, you would make it after 7 o'clock because it got cheaper. You would charge for the connection plus X amount of dollars a minute, so like could be dollars a minute. And you would make a list of what you wanted to talk about, and then you would watch the clock, because literally once you cross the minute mark, now you are paying for the next minute. And now I'm walking around with a supercomputer that can take effectively unlimited number of photographs. I have thousands of pictures in this thing. And I'm in the middle of a park and I'm uploading this picture where thousands of people can see the picture. And I'm complaining because it's slow. And go, talk about 21st century first world problems. This technology wasn't even possible 20 years ago. And I'm complaining because it's not doing it as fast. And I had to stop and realize how impossible a present I'm living in, how first world a problem this is, how modern technology a problem this is. And when I pause and I reflect, I marvel at even the nature of this problem, that I have this incredible thing going on, and it's just happening slower. And that every new place is a new starting point. And it's interesting to consider what our baseline is and what our expectations come to be. And one of the ways you can tell is what makes you mad. Like we are angry sometimes about things that were unimaginable a generation ago, that were beyond even science fiction a couple of generations ago. And here we are living in it and complaining because there's something about it that isn't quite as good as we wish it was. But we think about this impossible present, and then we can consider, where can we go from here? What's possible from here if we are already in this amazing, technologically marvelous place, in this culturally incredible place? What opportunities do we have to create an even more amazing and even more highly improbable, even statistically impossible future? Every new place is a new starting point. And what would have seemed impossible a century or two ago is where we are. And where can we go from here? Because now this is our starting point. And going from this impossible place to the next impossible place is just another step for us. What next starting point will I create? Now, here's one of the keys. And this is something I got my reminder of just with that technology issue. Always content, never complacent. What content means is I'm happy the way things are. I look around, I see the wonders of life. I see the grand adventures. I get to drink deeply from just the vivid joys of life. I get to be a whole person, living a whole life in this vivid bliss. And I get to be this epicenter of this experience. And so I'm happy where I am. If nothing changed, if nothing was possible, I would milk this moment for all the joy that is in it. But the never complacent, you don't sit still. Now, some people do what they might call like a positive discontent, where they say that the key to success is being unhappy where you are, being fed up where you are. Well, here gets to be a problem with that. Well, then you kind of have to spend your whole life miserable, angry about things, terrified about things, hating your life. So I remember learning, and I think I heard this from a Tony Robbins seminar. He was talking about doing this thing, and this guy was scribbling some things down, and he seemed like he was really upset. Well, this other guy seemed really happy. And so I asked a question. It's like, well, tell us about like how you're doing. He said, well, I'm having a great day. And said, well, what makes today great? It's like, hey, every day above ground is a great day. And what he means by that is, I'm not dead. That makes today a great day. And then for those of us who are Christians, even if you are dead, well, now I'm in heaven. That makes for a great eternity. So either I'm having a great time here or I'm going to have a great time there. Either way, I win, I win, I win. It's all winning. Then this other guy, he was miserable. And he's like, oh, you know, gotta learn this stuff and get this stuff down so I can like get my business to the next level and stop living like a dog. Well, this guy was making like $4 million a year. But he was succeeding by this quote unquote affirmative discontent, by hating where your life is now to drive you forward, by being fed up with the here and the now to drive you to the next level. Well, think about this. If you made $4 million last year, do you think you could manage to eke out a reasonably comfortable, reasonably happy life? I think I could probably somehow manage to do that. I may not consider a $4 million lifestyle living like a dog. That'd be a heck of a dog's life. But that's where this guy was. Now, would you rather have $4 million and 40 years of misery to get to your $4 million a year life? Or would you rather have, say you had to manage somehow to get by on $1 million, but you got to be every day above ground is a great day guy? What if you even had to somehow managed to get by on $400,000, a tenth of what this guy was making. But you got to be happy along the way. You got to live a life of love. You got to live a life of joy. You got to live a life of inner peace and peace with those outside you. Could you even maybe manage that on 1% of what this guy was miserable with? I think so. Always be content with where you're. Just don't be complacent. If you have goals, move toward those goals, but be inspired that this is good. That's even gooder. Yeah, I know good is not a word, but like, this is good. That's even gooder. And then I can even get gooder until I can get gooder-est, and then gooder-est, this. And your goal is to keep making it even better. So as we deal with the impossible present, we can have an even more amazing, glorious, impossible future. Always being content with where we are, experiencing the gratitude with all that there is. And when you spend your time in prayer, if you do our style of prayer of adoration, confession, and then thanksgiving, adoration is the focus on God's greatness, on the glory of God, on his character, on his nature, on all who he is. Confession is our admission to the mismatch. And it's not a chance to feel like scum, and you've always been scum, and you'll always be scum. It's an opportunity to notice like there is the glory of God, there is the glory of Christ, there is the holy, there is the powerful, there is the perfect, there is the perfect love and the perfect joy and the perfect peace. And this is where I mismatch in my choices and my behavior, my character. And that I take that to God and I confess it. And I seek to turn from that which mismatches to that which aligns. That I can be in more alignment with God, which is being more godly. I can be more in alignment with Christ, which is being more Christ-like. That I can be more of a little Christ, which is what Christian means. Christian means little Christ. And that as I come in adoration and confession, a big part of this thing is that thanksgiving, being grateful that I have this supercomputer in my pocket that is doing this thing, even if it's taking an awful long time to do the thing. And to suddenly pause and go, you know what? Every single app on this thing does something that is amazing. It does something that by standards a generation ago would have been miraculous. If I go at my dad, my age, I'm backing up 22 years. So in the 1990s, did we have these? No. We're back up a generation past that and go, okay, in the 1970s, in the 1950s, before World War II, before World War I, before the Western frontier closed in 1912, before the Civil War, and you begin to run backwards in time, you begin to really appreciate, you know what, we live in pretty amazing times. We live in a pretty amazing place. We live in a pretty amazing technological age, a global culture and a regional culture and even a local microculture, and a pretty amazing family. And I individually have a pretty amazing interaction with the world around me. And as we reflect on that Thanksgiving, we look for, and here's your attitude of gratitude. And if you remember this from the Thanksgiving message, the attitude of gratitude, be thankful for everything you would not want to lose. If you would not want it to go away, be grateful for it. That's part of that contentness. That's part of that happiness. That's part of that joy. Always content. And as we pray that Thanksgiving, we begin to recognize all that we already have, all we've already been blessed with. No matter how much we had to work for it, it's still a blessing. Because for all the things that I have, all the things that I experience, even if I earned it myself, just the opportunity to earn it, the economy and the culture in which I have these things, I didn't create that. Had I been born 100 years ago, had I been born in the third world, I wouldn't have had the same opportunities. There are parts of the world today where there really isn't much of an opportunity to lift yourself up out of poverty. You're born into it, you're going to die in it. And that's just the way life is. I don't live in that place. I live here. And I should have gratitude for that. And I should express that gratitude and understand the blessings that I have, the unearned grace, the unearned favor, not of like some racial history or something, but just this era, this time, this place, all the generations that have gone before me that allow me to have a life that didn't even exist a century ago. And to have gratitude for all of those blessings and how much this whole world, the way it is, might not even have existed had this war or that war, and within the wars, certain even individual battles just gone a different way. This whole world could be incredibly different. So as we pray Thanksgiving, to consider that even the smallest things in life are things to be grateful for, things to thank God for, and that in that gratitude to recognize how enormously blessed we already are. And then as we pray supplication, that's asking God for things and praying for blessings. You start with other people and you start with the needs of other people. It puts our own needs in context. But then here gets to be part of the thing. If we consider the sheer impossibility of the moment we are now and we are praying for the next step, well, that's not that big a deal. If I have $1 million and I'm praying for another 100,000, that's a 10% step. So if I recognize I have 1 million blessings and I'm praying for the next big blessing, that's a small step. But if I'm angry about things, that means things just aren't the way I want. If I'm feeling overwhelmed and hopeless and just all I'm seeing is what's bad, what I hate, what I despise, and I'm asking for something good, I'm asking for the opposite of my experience and definition of all the world. If I'm asking for something good in a world I perceive as all bad, I'm asking for something that is the reverse of how I see things. And I'm asking for something for me to interpret as reverse of how I interpret everything else. That's part of why that contentment is so important. Now, there's something in the brain, engineered and dropped into our brain called the reticular activating system. And it's an autopilot system that I believe God engineered into us as a powerful shortcut that presupposes we know how to work it. Now, most of us experience a reticular activating system as something kind of like I start to ponder, say I'm thinking about buying a green car. All of a sudden I see green cars all over the place. Or I'm pondering buying a convertible. Suddenly I start seeing convertibles all over the place. And part of why that happens is I'm not manifesting these things in that they didn't exist before and suddenly they come into existence because now I'm thinking about them. But rather they're there, I just don't notice them until I program my reticular activating system that green cars, convertibles are important. And so suddenly, every time one shows up in my field of experience, it goes pop, hey, there's one, hey, there's one, hey, there that is. Well, this autopilot system in our brain is designed to just notice what we tell it is important. And so if I'm a judgmental person, this is what the reticular activating system will work. It's like, oh, well, being judgmental is important. So, oh, there's something we can judge. Oh, there's something we can judge. Oh, okay, that's kind of borderline, but if we interpret it this way, we can judge that too. And that, okay, now that's actually really, really good. But what's the way here's a way we could judge that. And then what happens is it reinforces that self-righteousness. I am right and I have the authority to sit in judgment over everyone and everything because I have that right. My way is so right and so perfect. My insight and my judgment is so right and so perfect. I can tell the world how it ought to be. Now, that may sound a little arrogant. And if someone else was doing it to you, where they don't know the story, they don't have the facts, but they will sit in judgment over you, you would recognize, well, that's bad, that's self-righteous, what the heck? Happens all the time. So which also means that if I'm the one doing it, I need to catch myself doing it. And that's last week's lesson on the me pole. The me pole is anything that's not the way I think it should be is wrong. Why? Because my way is the right way. My way is common sense. My way is perfectly correct. And anything that's not my way is obviously slap a negative label on it. But it's in some form wrong. But on the other hand, if we use our RAS, if we use our reticular activating system, if we program the autopilot to be looking for the good things, we, in prayer, are programming our autopilot. We're predisposing it to things that are of the glory of God. Now we have an opportunity to align with God's character, to align with love, to align with joy, to align with peace. Because our confession time is, okay, when we mismatch, we need to release the mismatch and seek the alignment. And if I program my autopilot to seek that alignment, then when I have an opportunity to choose between loving and unloving, I am predisposing my autopilot to look for the loving opportunity. I am predisposing the autopilot to choose the loving option from whatever list of options exist on my menu. When I pray thanksgiving and I am thanking God for things like, the beauty of the sky, well, then my reticular activating system goes, oh, well, the beauty of the sky is important. So whenever there's a beautiful sky, I need to notice that. And then when there's a beautiful sky, you're like, oh, look at that. That is beautiful. If you are grateful for a beautiful sunset, then it will predispose your reticular activating system, your autopilot, to notice the beautiful sunsets, to start to notice beautiful and opulence all around you, to notice opportunities for adventure. It begins to pick up on all of these things because you have told it through your gratitude. This is important. And goes, oh, well, if it's important, we go, hey, how about this? Are you grateful for Christmas lights? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, Christmas lights. Oh, wait, more Christmas lights. Is that grateful too? It's like, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. Oh, grateful for gorgeous. Oh, how about this? Is this gorgeous? Like, well, yeah, that's pretty. That's nice. Like, oh, how about this? Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And whatever you predispose yourself to, you will notice, because that's how the autopilot is engineered. It has been created and installed in you to work this way. By noticing whatever you tell your brain is important, it keeps running in the background, and so it's flagging all these things to show to you because you told it, this is important. I want to see all of these. If they pass by me within my perception, I want to know. And then we take inspired relevant action for whatever it is that we decide we want to change. And so we have the prayer and the RAS. Now here's part of where some of this happens. Inspired relevant action to whatever it is we seek. So if I have been praying for other people, and then I have an opportunity to be part of the answer to my own prayer for them, then the inspired relevant action is, what can I do to be part of the answer to my own prayer for this other person? If I have been praying for them to have an opportunity, say they're looking for a job, and I am praying for God to lead them to that job, to lead them for the job where they are a blessing and they can be blessed with appropriate compensation for the blessing they are. And my autopilot is then going, what job would match up for them? And I see that and go, oh, wait, Joe just said that he was looking for someone. And Sally might be a good match for Joe. I should connect the two of them. And it's because I'm looking for inspired, relevant action to align with my own prayers, because I told my autopilot, this is important. I want Sally to be well employed, and Joe's my friend, and I want him to have a great team member. And if she would make a great team member and he needs the help, and he will compensate a great team member in a way commensurate with how great an asset she is to his work, that's a good match. And I end up being the conduit as part of the answer to my own prayer, because I programmed it in my prayer, and then I have been given the opportunity to be an answer to prayer. And then likewise, when I'm praying something for myself, if I'm praying for something as concrete as financial abundance, and I see an opportunity, I will tend to notice the opportunity because that's what I've been praying for. If I am praying for my relationships and I'm praying for more deeply loving relationships, my autopilot will tend to notice opportunities to build love. If I'm praying for more vivid love, joy, and peace, I will notice opportunities for love, opportunities for joy, and opportunities for peace. And that if I take that inspired, relevant action aimed at that thing I've been praying for, aimed at that thing I have told my brain, because I brought it to God and God has engineered the system. And even if you're not a Christian and you're not a praying type, is those things you focus and dwell on. This engineered autopilot works that way, by whatever you put emotional intensity on, tells your brain what's important, tells that autopilot, tells the reticular activating system, this is important, go notice this. And then you start doing things, you take that inspired, relevant action to create an accumulation of causes set in motion. Now I've got a lot of causes in motion on a lot of things aimed at different directions. A whole bunch of them land in dead ends. But part of it is I'm aimed down this path. Now, sometimes the path seems to go backwards, but have you ever been driving someplace and you realize, oh, I can't get there as well this way, and the direction you go for some part of the journey takes you further away from the thing rather than closer to it, as the crow flies. But the crow may fly in a straight line, but the roads of life don't always go in a straight line. And if you look on a globe, you might draw a straight line from like LA to Honolulu, but if you look on a flat map, it's an arc. And so even the straightest lines we have may not always be straight. And psychocybernetics, Maxwell Maltz talks about the servo mechanism and this idea that when you're in a plane, at any given moment, you're not exactly 100% perfectly on course. If an autopilot did not have the ability to change course, if it just pointed in a direction and it just went in a straight line and that was it, you would almost always miss your mark. But it's that constant check-in, course correct, check-in, course correct, check-in, course correct, check-in, course correct, course correct, course correct, that allows you to reach your destination. And accumulated causes in motion can produce spectacular results. Because every outcome, even if this isn't the outcome you're after, even if it's the opposite of the outcome you're after, often contains within it important learnings. The average incredibly wealthy person, now these days, as easy, I put that in quotes, as it is to make $1 million, there are tons of millionaires, largely by virtue of just, you had property and you kept it. You inherited something and it just appreciated. But the people who became decamillionaires, that became really wealthy, commonly through business, often went through 3 or 4 bankruptcies on the way there. But here's the key. You don't go bankrupt exactly the same way twice. You learn what went wrong, and then you take that new learning, that new understanding, and you do it differently. And then maybe it fails again, and you take now this new elevated learning, this new elevated understanding, you have another go at it. And after stumbling through and failing an average of 3 or 4 times, that's the path to that level of success, because you need these lessons and this understanding and this learning and this insight. Now, you can shortcut a lot of that with good coaching, good consultants, and working with teams that have done this before. So they've been there, they've done that, they know what they're doing, to minimize the probability of going through some of those failures. But sometimes to achieve the pinnacle, some stuff is going to go backwards more than it goes forwards. And sometimes it'll go backwards more than you can afford. And that's the bankruptcy. And the law of 72, if you maintain a constant motion forward, the law of 72 is part of, it talks about doubling. if you make a 1% shift, the way most of us think about it is if I can improve something by 1%, I can double every 100 times. But it doesn't double every 100 times. It doubles every 72 times. So if I have an investment of $100,000 and it makes 7.2%, it's going to double in 10 years. If it makes 10%, it doesn't take 10 years to double at 10%. It takes 7.2 years to double at 10%. And these accumulated doublings produces impossible results. So here gets to be a thing. So suppose I get just over 10% return on my investment, whatever my investment portfolio might be. And I want to retire with $1 million. And I get 14 years away from retirement. And I'm looking at my money. It's like, after all this time, I have $250,000. I'm supposed to retire in 14 years. And I'm only 1/4 of the way there. I'm actually exactly on time. Because if I keep accumulating my 10%, well, in 7 more years, I'm going to be at $500,000. And I'm going to be 7 years away from retirement. And in the 7 more years after that, I will be at my $1 million and I will have achieved my goal. It may seem impossible, but when things can work on doublings, you only need to be halfway there, 1 doubling away. You only need to be 1/4 of the way there, 2 doublings away. And this law of 72, the making a 1% shift, every 72 times you can make a 1% shift, you get a doubling. And if you manage your 1%, you can achieve almost anything you can imagine. You just need a path, and then you need to get started down that path. So when we ponder the reticular activating system, how we feel about things. Now, here's the downside of that. God engineered the system into us with the assumption that we would use it right. So you have this autopilot, but if you have an autopilot in a plane and you're leaving LA and you set your autopilot to get you to Honolulu, it'll keep course correcting on its way to Honolulu. But if you're going like, what if we totally mess this up? We end up going towards Chicago. And then you program your autopilot for Chicago, and then you keep complaining that you're not getting to Hawaii. That would be a problem because you programmed the autopilot the wrong way. And so the assumption with an autopilot is we know how to use the autopilot. And at the very least, we can recognize when we're using it wrong, because say in the LA to Chicago versus the LA to Hawaii example, you look down and go, oh, there's land. There's supposed to be water. Let's see if we're using this right. Like, we talked about being afraid of ending up going towards Chicago. And guess what? Now we're going towards Chicago. Well, let's reset it to go toward Honolulu. So if you recognize that you're consistently getting results that are contrary to what you want, look at how you're using your autopilot. There's a pretty good chance that you are not using the autopilot the way it was gifted to you, as a gift, a blessing to help you get those places that you have chosen to program it to go. And then change your programming. And start focusing on what it is that you do want instead of getting bogged down by the things you don't want. Looking for the things you were grateful for so you get more of what you're grateful for, rather than just being angry and being fearful over the things that aren't exactly the way you want. And then you end up getting more things to be angry about, more things to be fearful about, more things to get overwhelmed about. The more intensity you have about any given emotional state, figure that you are predisposing your reticular activating system, you're predisposing your autopilot to keep aiming at that which you fill your thoughts with. So fill your thoughts with that which you desire. Fill your thoughts with that which you're grateful for. And if you pray, if you're a praying person, think about how prayer focuses the autopilot, how prayer takes the adoration, the character of God, the perfect love of God. And then in your confession, you can You lay down your mismatches and you leave behind your mismatches. Let go, forgiven, to seek alignment with God's love. And you do the same thing with joy, and the same thing with peace, and the same thing with patience, and the same thing with goodness, the same thing with self-control, the same thing with gentleness, the same thing with the fruit, all the fruit of the Spirit, the same thing with the aspects of love that you confess when you feel jealous, you confess when you're being arrogant, and that you have gratitude for the patience that you've been given, the kindness that you've been given, because love is patient, love is kind. And so you focus your gratitude on patience and kindness. And love is not jealous and does not boast, it is not arrogant. And so you confess these things and you lay those things down, you seek alignment with God's love. And that as you do that, you're predisposing that reticular activating system, you're predisposing that autopilot to aim at these things. And you do the same thing with the things that you desire for your life. And then you take the inspired, relevant action to be part of your own answer to your own prayer. And understand the law of 72. And just the simple idea that sometimes you're moving backwards to move forward. Sometimes you have to back away from the dead end and you have to get on a whole different path to be able to move. And it's not always going to be a straight line. And that sometimes you'll be off course more than you're on course. But you can get to amazing places and accomplish amazing things. So as we prepare to move into the next year, to reflect prayerfully on that which you desire, to reflect prayerfully on that which is the glory of God, to reflect prayerfully upon the mismatch and lay down the mismatch and let it go so that doesn't program and predispose your other part. To seek out all the things that you are grateful for and all the things you would not want to lose and all the things that you want more of in your life. And to dwell there and in prayer for other people and to seek to be part of the answer for other people and then prayer for yourself and take inspired, relevant action to be part of the answer to your own prayer. And as you walk your life forward, to be blessed that you may be a blessing, and to take this impossible present and build an even more amazing and even more impossible, glorious future. This is Pastor Scott Conrad Questian, praying blessings upon you as we ponder where we are, we ponder where we're going, and we create a compelling future that inspires in us all that which is our part of this future that we are seeking to create.